Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Covestro Arena at K2022. We have a lot of free seats here, VIP row. Hans, please have a seat. Yes, wonderful. Come join us because now we want to talk about circular design and the current practice in design. Can design actually be an answer to the question how to design more sustainable products? Look at this one. What's that? Well, we answer that question. This is called positive plastics. Plastics that are positive. Why? How? We'll also talk about that one. And we have the next generation. That's wonderful. And we have the next generation of designers here on stage. We want to talk about, what the challenges and opportunities are that designers are facing today, and most important, how they think, how they approach product design. So please give them a big round of applause as they come up on the stage. Come on, guys. Walk up on stage, you get an applause, and then I'll make the introductions. All right. Here they are. And you don't have to stand in the back. Come closer, come closer. Yes. All right, so I'll just go from left to right. Okay, I start with you. This is Massimo Scheidegger. He's a design student. He also studied at the Bauhaus University in Weimar and some other universities, and he's one of the 1 in 20 design competition winners with our product that's called Charby, and I'll tell us a little bit about it later. And then next to him, we have Emilie Burfeind. She's a material designer and a color and trim designer at Hyundai Europe, and also a 1 in 20 winner and the creator of this fine shoe, Sneature. And she'll also tell us about the story about this shoe. And then we have Efrat Friedland. She's the co-founder of Positive Plastics and a material researcher and specialist. And they launched a sample kit featuring sustainable plastics. Here, this is made by Covestro, by the way. So I'll just put that here so you can explain what it is in a minute. And then we're very fortunate to have Lutz Dietzold here. He is the CEO of the German Design Council, and he will give us a little bit of a perspective about the next new generation of designers. I think you have a long history and experience with the design processes and how they changed over time. All right, so where do we stand with the current design? We have a few things here on stage. So let me start with you, Emilie. I showed the shoe. You studied design. From your perspective as like the new generation of designers, fresh ideas, how did you approach this project? Tell us a little bit about it, and what changed for you in the design process when you think about sustainability and circularity?
Yeah, so I studied at University of Art and Design in Offenbach at the Institute for Material Design. So I was always concentrated on materials themselves. And then before starting my final thesis, I was looking into what are bio-based materials that could be implemented for sneakers. Because, like they are right now, they are made of many different plastics. It's really hard to disassemble them, to recycle them. And then I really started to do hands-on research to find out what are, for example, fibers that can be used to create this knitted upper. And then I made Sneature out of 3 different components. So the upper is made of upcycled dog hair. The transition area.
What kind of dog is it?
It's from private households.
So it's a mix of different dog hairs?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, and I worked there together with a startup Modus Intarsia, and they developed a yarn for it that I used here. And then I have this transition area made of natural rubber, and the sole made of mushroom mycelium. And for me, really important was for me to have a holistic overview of the process, not to only focus on the materials themselves, but also to see how are they produced, to use, for example, additive manufacturing. So the products, they can be individualized, customized, or produced also on demand and locally. And this is, for me, I think, what's really important in design, not to only focus on one specific theme, but to have a more generalistic view of how products should be designed in the future in order to be more sustainable.
Mm-hmm. So, Massimo, I said you have a product that's called Charby, or multiple products. You more developed a way to a process to make products. Tell us a little bit about Charby.
Yeah, Charby is actually a plant pot that where biochar is involved in, and the idea was to start with a material that is already environmentally positive, has a positive impact itself, and then to find a process which is already existing and just put it in as an additional material. And to end up then in an object that is in our daily lives, and it was a kind of the thing. The idea was to look how it is, or how it is to deal with all these responsibilities that we've got as designers, and I think the responsibility is a really big topic in our field, and yeah, it was an interesting process that we encountered in.
I bet. So
project.
you have that flower pot, but potentially could be any kind of object.
Potentially can be any kind of object. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. And then next, we have these samples, Efrat. So they're called positive plastic. Why positive? And how did this whole thing start?
So positive because we wanted to stop the plastic bashing. As material consultants, we work with designers, we work with engineers, product managers, and we also think of the end user. And in the last decade, plastic had a very bad name. Not rightfully so. So we believe the negative thing about plastic is how we handle it. And we wanted to bring into the market. So this kit is intended for designers, engineers, people that work on products that are made from rigid materials. And the products are rigid and are here to stay. We wanted to bring the knowledge to them what kind of materials they can use as drop-in solution. This means immediately replacing virgin materials that they're using in injection molding, because these materials are all injection moldable. And all have a sustainable backbone. This means that they're either bio-based or biocomposite or mass-balanced or recycled. Of course, we have materials with a high content of recycled, whether post-consumer or post-industrial. There are no virgin materials here. And the reason of this kit, or the beauty of this kit, is that designers usually don't have the knowledge on these materials. If a designer comes to the K, look around, there are 3,562 exhibitors here. It's mind-blowing. And this is why they need us, as material specialists, to point out what kind of alternative materials they can use today that are commercially available. And all of them have been checked. Some have life cycle assessments. The bio-based materials, for instance, are not jeopardizing food crops. So, yeah, whole story.
Wow, really cool. So we heard Emilie talk about the holistic approach. Massimo said, well, we feel the responsibility that we have as designers is really important. And Efrat just mentioned, well, we want it to be positive, and to really help, because as designers, well, nowadays there are like so many different materials out there. What can I use? So in your experience, what changed really over time, and where do we stand today?
Wow.
Big question.
Big question. But I think there is one point Efrat pointed out, that the designer will be in the future, it's more how to build teams with specific views on specific themes, and then to bring together the right people to find solutions. And at the end, it's about finding solutions, and it's not always about, I know on the K here, it's not about new products. We have to discuss if we need something and how do we need it and what could be a solution. Even if we talk about the design process. For example, we are a very old institution, about 70 years old, and we created a design award in the 50s called the gute Form, the good form. The means comes a little bit from all this tabletop industry, finding a final good form. Teacup or something else, a knife, this is a good form, and they never need again another. The idea is at the end maybe right, but now we are talking about mass customization, so every need should be, we talk about diversity, we should reflect this. But what does it mean to find the right products in the future? I think this is very important to build the right teams together, and for us, even doing a lot of projects with young designers, graduates and design schools, it's a transfer to the industry. We have all this at the K, all these big players, and coming up with first small innovations, little innovations, but how could you put it together with the companies and to bring it, to make it real? The transfer, I think this is a very important point. I think the graduates, the young designers, they are open, but it's a mind change in the industry. It's needed.
Quite interesting. So, Emilie and Massimo, what do you want from the industry? What do you expect from them? What do you need as designers? And think, okay, do you need more consciousness, more responsibility when it comes to the materials? What do you need to really design the next generation of products that are ideally circular, more sustainable?
Yeah, I think like most important is like what you just said, Lutz, is like this openness to something that is maybe not known yet, something that looks maybe a bit too different, that looks maybe too advanced or maybe also strange, but to really be open and then to like listen to what the designers propose, and then of course like find a way to communicate and to collaborate. I think this is what we need basically.
Yeah, and definitely providing a network. How you process that material, and what happens by the end of the life of that material, what happens with it. I think it's a big responsibility of all these companies to also develop with the material a process, how to recycle it, and what happens to close a loop, to at least have a strategy to close a loop or expand the loop or create a new loop for this circular design.
So it's about communication and really listening to each other and maybe understanding each other's perspectives. Efrat, in your experience as a consultant, I mean, do you see a lot of resistance towards like doing things differently now? And we've always done it that way, so why change it? Or do you see a lot of openness, especially in the industry, to say, okay, yeah, why not? Let's try it.
Both. I think risk is something, or change is something that people are normally afraid of, even if they understand they have to do it. I think, as you mentioned, communication is key, and one of the reasons that material consultants like Chris, myself, exist and survive is because the material manufacturers, the industry, not normally communicates to designers. They could talk to the engineers, to the procurement team, but they have to communicate better to designers. And I agree with Massimo, it has to be circular. So companies that have already collaborations with recyclers, with collectors, with providers of bio-based materials could gain trust of designers to do better products. But if I'm a designer, if I'm a product team and I don't know your story, that's one problem. And of course, it's the bigger the company, the more difficult it is to move, whether a material provider, but also a home appliance producer or any producer of goods. The smaller the company, they're easier to change their manners, their processing. So that's. But I do sense a change and a transition to a more circular future, but step by step. A bit too slow, in my opinion.
And I like very much before the discussion about imperfect things to try, because at the end there are also a lot of consumers, and they have also to change their daily life and to be attracted by the new solutions. But it's a little bit like try and error and like taste it and then give you feedback and then let's develop together, find together solutions. So I think this is very important.
And I think that's also a big responsibility of the designers, because when I studied design 20-something years ago, we were taught to create this desire for products, right? So I created a coffee machine that would allow the consumer to desire this coffee machine. And I think and I hope that gradually this desire would change from a desire of ownership and to a certain object to a desire of belonging. So brands that, I'll take Patagonia as an example because everyone uses this example, but rightfully so. Their jackets are not entirely beautiful. We don't look good when we wear their down jackets specifically, but they create a community, they create a service. And they speak the values that people, for instance, I believe in these values, and this is the desire that we have to nurture. So designers should think less of a designer for an object, or a desire for an object, more a desire for belonging, for values, and to infuse this on their products and later on the consumers.
It's very interesting because, when I look at this product, it feels like, this is exactly what Efrat is talking about. Gives me a sense of belonging. Sneature is the combination of the sneaker and the nature in it. So this was actually at one time, part of a dog. It was the dog's hair. So it is nature. I'm nature. So the belonging and sort of the emotional aspect of it, despite the functionality that it needs to have as a shoe, is really not a contradiction, but a combination of it. And Lutz, you have a lot of experience with the industry. I mean, designers always need to talk with the industry. The industry sometimes wants to know what are the design trends. On the other side, you sort of want to know what are you actually developing as, for example, the chemical industry. What's coming? How can we talk to each other? What are the challenges for you as designers? Well, the German Design Council, you sort of speak for a lot of designers. What are the challenges that you see? What do you see we need to make more advances?
The challenge is that to convince the companies really to open, to get in this discussion, because we don't have time. Finally, that is, and even a lot of markets now we're coming from the climate change to the discussions of energy crisis. What does it mean for certain industries at this moment? For example, in Germany, the ceramics, the glass, they can't compete anymore. They will be away, maybe in a few months. So that means, and what does it mean? So every company has to ask and say, how is the situation now, and what can I do to change? And then I have to open up, because there are solutions, there are opportunities, possibilities, but you have to force this innovation, and even to understand what is the DNA of your company. You should not lose it. All these discussions about greenwashing and so on, concentrate.
It's very interesting. We talk so much about the openness, the flexibility, the listening, the dialogue. One thing we talked about over the course of the past couple of days was courage. And courage is part of Covestro's, values. But, it's one thing to have it up on the wall, and the other, you actually do it to be courageous. So, for you as, students then stepping out into the world, it also needs a lot of courage, obviously, to, make it as a designer, to bring your visions into reality. Do you think this is also something that the industry needs more of, courage to also, to talk to each other and then just start doing something?
Yeah, definitely. It needs more courage. It has to be a bit more adventurous, I think, the whole business. But as it is really hard. I think we always think in a small scale, like when we are designing, you're just trying to do a project and develop it and everything. And for a big company like Covestro, it's really, everything moves a little slower. So I think they need to be a bit more courageous to really step out and risk something to get somewhere.
Sometimes step out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. I think the courage should be courage to reduce, the way I see it. So as consumers, of course, reducing our consumption, but for companies to reduce their portfolios, whether of materials or products, the courage to be open to collaborations, because if we're not looking at more at linear growth, but we still want to grow, as a sole company, it's very hard to do that, no matter how large you are. So you have to collaborate and to create partnerships. Then you could survive. That's the way I see it, and that's very courageous as well.
Yeah, and I think also what's really important, like especially when we were talking about greenwashing, is like to have this consistency, like this, and which is also connected to being courageous, because I think in order to have a like really innovative product, one needs to step one step further, and even if it may take longer or be more difficult, I think this is also what we need to be really consistent in, for example, creating circular products, and to really avoid that it's just a little bit sustainable, and large part is not really true. So I think that's really important as well.
Do what you say, walk the talk. All right. So at this point, I want to open it up to the audience. Do we have any questions to our panelists? about circular design. Yes. We'll get you a microphone. Left or right? Someone will get to you.
Hello, thank you for the talk. I'm Christina, and I wonder where do you think the consumers stand, and how are they segmented? Are they in? Are they not in? Can you elaborate a little bit on the consumers?
I think from like in terms of shoes, I think when you just have a look at how many sustainable sneaker brands existing like Veja or also others, you can really see that consumers want sustainable products, but I still see a bit of controversy of like real sustainability and to what's on the market actually. But I think people want it, but I think another problem is also prices, because not everyone can afford, for example, a sustainable product that is much more expensive than another one. So I think, we need to find a way for the consumer to have both, to be sustainable and to be affordable at the same time.
And also to not puzzle the consumers with too much information or false information. I think people that don't have, let's say, the knowledge that we have on materials, that are not privileged to have this knowledge, could not judge the marketing and the slogans and the call-outs. So it's very easy to fool nowadays consumers, even if they want to become sustainable. I think that's the important thing, to give everyone tools to analyze sustainability on a product level, on a company level. That will take time, but that's, I think, one of the keys to a sustainable and circular future.
So essentially more transparency in the whole process.
Yeah, and a lot of education that needs to happen.
I think it works in both ways. A sustainable brand is attractive brand, then okay, it comes. But it means what is next? Yeah, like when you have some sustainable shoes, but what do you have at home, the consumer? And this is a process really to think about. It's not we're saying it's not enough, but just go on and even maybe don't buy my products. It's difficult. Yeah.
Yes. And sustainability in itself is really a broad term. I mean, when we talk about circularity, yes, we need to talk about closing the loop, but sustainability is something that, can mean everything or nothing, right? All right, we have another question. Yes, please.
Well, Daniel here, I'm a producer, plastic industry, and one thing that we haven't been talking about, I mean, creating something is the first, and the second step suddenly is the large firm actually producing and sending out. The missing link, I see the small and medium-sized businesses. Somehow they don't have the opportunities to actually establish a connection with the designers. The economy is not there. On the other hand, they don't have actually the power to affect the market. They are basically working for the larger companies. So how are we going to fix the missing link is a question of mine.
Very interesting point. Yes, who wants to answer that?
I could answer maybe with an example of positive plastics. So we have in the kit Covestro, which is obviously one of the largest players in the market, but we have also startup companies producing materials. There are 4 people in Sweden doing lignin and ABS, for instance. And this is how we can help them achieve or reach designers. And it takes even large brands. So if we look at consumer electronics, we worked with BSH. I'm allowed to talk about this project, so that's not a problem. With BSH last year, and we shifted their product from 100% virgin to a material that is 100% post-industrial recycled of a small company in the Black Forest in Germany. No one heard about them before. And through this, we pushed it. So it's also, again, the responsibility of the designers to not only introduce beautiful products, but help move the small and medium companies that produce the materials, because these companies are also very innovative at times. So there's room for everyone, as long as they do good materials and good products.
And organizations that help us designers are such organizations like the German Design Council, which are trying to connect the young ones, the new ones, with the big scale market, but also with the smaller ones. So you have a platform where somebody provides you with a network, and this is really important. This is why I think that the GDC is such an important organization. here.
I was wondering about that. Lutz, do you have like a priority to, talk with the big players that can actually make a difference, or do you have the whole range of
With the
like
whole
startups to
range.
mid-sized
So,
business?
Yes, the startups are a little bit more difficult. Yeah, because we are looking on long-term strategies, even looking when it's come to produce things and so on. But it's this point really to bring together the innovation coming from the schools and bringing people together to build this platform. And yes, we are also a member-based organization. So we have about 340 members producing company, mostly coming from Germany. We have the big ones from the automotive industry, with the German Design Council. So, but we have also a lot of small and medium-sized companies, and they build also a network, because for them it's very important coming from the porcelain industry, talking to the automotive industry. I think this is also an important task to connect them and to bring this, to force this exchange between the industries, and even to see what industries are more interesting for the young designers at the moment. This is very interesting to have a look at, and even to look which the other producing companies looking at, because before it was mostly they were all interested to talk with the automotive industries coming from other industries, but now it shifted. It comes to the companies from the material side, but also from the health, and all these companies engaging very strong in the sustainable part. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you for that question. We have another question. John. He's a regular.
Sorry, am I boring you?
No. Great question as always.
This is one of those things where is it a question or is it a comment? I think it's both. So my angle is I talk to designers a lot, and designers are very smart, intelligent people who hear the voice of the customer. They hear the voice of the consumer. And I feel right now we're at a tipping point. Right now the consumers are waking up, just like Efrat was saying. There's more information. Chris Lifteri was saying it before as well. There's more information that designers can use to hear the consumer, to employ circular design, to embody right to repair, to stop obsolescence by design, to actually start making an impact, make the products actually easy to be recycled and disassembled and things like that. And my challenge to you, if you will, is keep going. You're doing something really, really important. So please keep going. If you have any comments, I'm happy to hear them.
Do you agree?
Thank you. And
Yes.
yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. I think for me personally, it probably is the easiest way to design in a trend, because I know it already has an acceptance. Let's put it with speckled plastics. Mm-hmm. It has already this image of being something sustainable, or this your shoe. It already has the look of the sustainable product. Mm-hmm. But I think we should be encouraged also to do stuff which is glossy again, but with that, it means you have to educate the consumer, and this is the responsibility of the designers, but also of the material developers. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. So, if there are no further questions, I want to thank all of you for coming. Do we have another question? Yes, we do. All right. So, last question.
If possible, yeah?
Yes, of course.
Sasha Blumhoff, I work for Niaga, and we are a company that's trying to help producers of products redesign products in a completely circular way. We do that for mattresses, carpet, and furniture panels, so completely different sectors. And I really liked your remark that you said we also need to make sure that we close the loop, and then we need to make sure that it's clear how to return the product, how it can be recycled, all this information. And my question would be for all of you, with the knowledge that you now have, how could we speed that up? Because it's not just bringing the product to the market, but then the whole infrastructure that comes after. How could we speed up the education, the knowledge, the fact that it needs to be there, etc.? What is your idea there and your experience?
Who wants to tackle that?
I could try. I think it has to come from different directions. First and foremost, the regulation. Putting in place enough recycling facilities So that's from the top, but it also has to come bottom up from the consumers to change their behaviors, to be less lazy, to return things. But the consumers need to be incentivized. And again, us as designers and material specialists, we have to also better understand the materials and see, for instance, if I look at this shoe, it will compost and biodegrade. That's great. Maybe it could fit for children more than for adults. Maybe for adult, I would like to have a shoe that will last for 10 years. Maybe the sneaker producers should stop communicating to runners that, oh, if you run more than 80 kilometers, you have to change your shoe because it will fail you. No, I want a shoe that I can run 8,000 kilometers and I don't have to change it. So producers, regulatory, consumers, education. It's very basic.
All right. Massimo, do you want to add to that?
I think in the end we all sit in the same gutter. So it is not about finding the one that did a bad job or has the big guilt that he produced products that weren't good. It's more about encouraging this person to come on board and try to make it a bit of a better place and reach these goals and succeed in it. And I think this is the way to speed up the whole process.
Yeah, I think what is also like really important, or in terms of education for the consumer, is to find a way how to involve the consumer in the process as well. And this is, I think, what we have, for example, with customization, that we have like an opportunity for a consumer to say, I prefer, I don't know, certain kind of color, certain kind of patterns, and to have this on one side, but it could also be interesting because when I'm thinking about, for example, maker labs, where people can come and go in an open space and create something on their own. I think it could also be interesting, for example, when we talk about local production or like additive production, that maybe also people can take part of it. And I think if you understand more the process of how a product is being made, then you put a lot more value on it as well, because then you understand how complex it is, how much time it takes, what are the resources that stand behind. And I think there are many possibilities how to involve the user, but I think we have to find a way and to try.
All right, wonderful. We have to conclude our discussion at this point because we're out of time, but we will directly continue right here, because now we just talked about the current practice, and we'll talk about the visions for circular design in half an hour at 3 p.m. And for the current practice, let me conclude. I mean, we talked about how we need to connect the dots, to close the loop, to really talk to each other, how to have a holistic approach, realize that we are all responsible, whether we're consumers or the designers or the manufacturers, really take that responsibility on and talk to each other, come together, collaborate, and then we can change the current practice and move to our visions, which is what we will talk about in 25 minutes. So get some coffee and then come back here for our next panel at 3 p.m. Thank you guys for coming here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.